You've been waiting all week for that Saturday show. Tune in, see what happened, let your troubles go. Work real hard, now it's time to take it slow. Kick back and relax with that Saturday show.
Good morning, Albuquerque. And when I say good morning to you, you know it's Saturday morning, time for That Saturday Show. I'm Jim Harvey, your host, and I'm joined by our esteemed director, Tom Dent.
Good morning.
We have another great show for you today with important discussions about community policing councils and what happens on the inside. We also have an alarming conversation about illegal dumping of toxic and radioactive landfills and so much more that we need to not only know about, but we need to do something about it. Of course, there's good news, and music today by Racine Kreyole. Tom?
Yeah, it's going to be a hard-hitting show. A lot of people don't know about the existence of community policing councils. We're going to talk about their history and their current status and everything involved there. Two things that one thing I'm kind of happy about is they've torn down the old city jail today. And also, with all these rains and monsoons, be careful. 2 people just got swept away in the arroyo and 1 certified dead. So ditches are deadly. Stay away.
Stay out of those arroyos. But first, let me get this off my chest. P&M, our local electric company, is planning a merger with a foreign company called Avangrid. And before the ink is even dry on the agreement, we are learning some alarming news about the company and about our local state leadership that should be a cause for concern. The company itself has a terrible track record of service that is so bad that one New England town had to buy generators to make up for the constant power failures. Looking even closer, the parent company is based in Spain and is mired in deep legal issues that could send their corporate leaders to prison. Back home, it seems that possibly 2 of our state officials could be guilty of ethics violations, where our Attorney General, for example, has been found to be so close to one of the attorneys that's involved with Avangrid. Seems like he went to school with him, and since he's been Attorney General, has hired this guy to do some work for him on a professional level. What looks strange here is how the Attorney General has some responsibility for passing approval of this merger. And it looks a little strange, and so people are looking at it very carefully. Good old Sheriff, who would be Mayor Manny Gonzalez, seems to be in trouble with the election board, where he is admitted to trouble submitting legitimate petition signatures that would qualify him for public funding for his mayoral campaign. He is currently awaiting decision on his appeal, even though it seems clear that forged signatures, $5 contributions from ghost contributors could bring an end to his right-wing campaign. Remember, Manny, who already has an awful track record of abuse and brutality, as well as thumbing his nose at the body camera mandates for his deputies, is also guilty of cozying up to the U.S. Attorney General and personal henchman for Trump during the Black Lives Matter protests here in Albuquerque. Let's hope that his mayoral campaign goes belly up. And finally, bravo to the progressive members of Congress who are relentless in pursuit of finding a path to voting rights. The latest is an effort to include voting infrastructure language in the bigger infrastructure bill that is still pending. Let's hope that that works. I would like to think that we owe gratitude to the brave men and women from Texas who continue to block legislation in that state that would suppress the vote. I am still asking What are the fascists and the racists really afraid of? And after that, we could use some good news, don't you think?
Use some good news right now.
Right now, we could use a little good news. So, Hasani, help us out here.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome to Good News News. I'm your correspondent, Hasani Olujimi, and I'm Gugu for Good News. The goal of this segment is to inspire and uplift you, the viewer, with nothing but good news. Let's jump right in, shall we? Our first story reads like this. As soon as Anastasia Pangonis jumps into any body of water she's familiar with, she's in her element. Let's continue, shall we? On the second day of U.S. Paralympic trials, Anastasia broke the world record in the S11 400 freestyle twice. The first, she set it first in the preliminaries and then later breaking it again in the finals. Being familiar to her surroundings is very important because Anastasia is a Paralympic swimmer who is blind. At age of 11, she began to experience trouble reading and keeping her eyes on the ball while playing soccer. Diagnosed with a genetic disease, her doctor recommended swimming, a non-contact sport. This was a great suggestion because she found herself struggling emotionally. Now, she says everyone is super ignorant when it comes to blindness. They think you have to look a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way, and that is not all the case. Just showing people this is what blind is, this is what blind looks like, this is what I can do as a blind person. Now, wow, isn't that good news? Congratulations, Anastasia, and America wishes you the best to bring home the gold. Yes, we do. Now, I wonder, why can elephants swim wherever they want to? They always have their trunks. Okay, I could have asked, what is the best exercise for swimmers? Pull-ups. Okay, let's move on quickly then. Okay. Comfort dogs arrive from several states to lend a paw to comfort Miami condo rescuers. When times get tough, man's best friend can often be the keystone in keeping our spirits from sinking too low. Let's learn a little bit more. 9 golden retrievers have been brought in from out of state to help first responders cope with the emotional toil of the Miami Surfside condo collapse. These comfort canines work just like therapy dogs. Their job right now is to help rescuers cope with the emotional toil of the collapse. These dogs are here for you, says Bonnie Fear, the Lutheran Church Charity's K9 Comfort Dog Ministry. Hallelujah. A lot of times the first responders come up. They'll fall to their knees, they'll start crying, or they will smile. We try not to say anything. We let the dog be the bridge for those people to grieve the loss or whatever they're feeling. Therapy dogs from Miami-Dade County Fire Department are already on the job, which represents a variety of large and small dog breeds. Comfort dogs are strong and well-proven therapy for depression, anxiety, and other forms of distress. Now, isn't that good news? Bravo! I love hearing good news behind the scenes, especially in this type of story. We know the building falling down, but we didn't hear about the good things that are happening on the ground, such as this, I might say. Well, so on and so forth. Let's check in with our favorite sassy grandmother, Little Big Mama. What do you have in store for us today, lady?
Thank you, Hasani. I just want to tell you and your viewers about a conversation I had with my husband not too long ago about getting old. Well, he came in the kitchen the other day talking about,
You know you're getting old when your hunting trips are for your reading glasses.
I told him, you know you're getting old when you get the urge, but can't remember what for. And he said,
You know you're getting old when your toupee turns gray.
I said, you know you're getting old when you forget to zip up. You're getting older when you forget to zip down. And he had the nerve to tell me, when you're getting old, your back goes out more than you do. But I got him, Hasani, and viewers, I got him. I said, you know you're getting old when you can whistle while brushing your teeth. Bye, baby.
Well, little Big Mama, you know you're getting old when trying one on means fastening your medical alert bracelet. The best way to turn a frown upside down is to get goo-goo for good news. Don't hold that one against me, y'all. We'll see you right here next time on That Saturday Show. Myself, your correspondent, and little Big Mama, of course. Next time on That Saturday Show with more good news.
Thank you, Hasani and Little Big Mama. Welcome to Perspectives. I'm your host for this segment, Tom Dent. We're going to be talking about the history of community policing councils and the current state of community policing councils in Albuquerque. My guests joining me today are Rowan Wymark, the chair of the Valley Community Policing Council, her friend and co-council member Dick Winterbottom, and Andres Valdez, who served with me for a number of years on the Southeast Area Community Policing Council. When we talk about the community policing councils, it's a lot of people don't know about them. They should know about them. The entire city should know about them. They were set up in 2014 and 2015 as part of the consent decree and the CASA agreement, the federal agreement to curtail excessive force and work in bettering our Albuquerque Police Department. And a lot of the work and the aspects of the Community Policing Council were to improve community policing in 6 different commands in Albuquerque. There's 6 different commands. There's the Northwest, the Northeast, the Foothills, the Southeast Area, and the South Valley. Like the Berry administration, when the consent decree was first signed on behalf of the feds coming in here, the Mayor Berry and his associates were very averse to signing the consent decree. As you may know, there was problems with the original Police Oversight Board, and now we have the Community Police Oversight Agency, which right now, in the last couple of years, has sort of taken over the liaison between the City Council, the city, and the community policing councils. A lot of the people that initially volunteered for the councils or were originally appointed into the councils were a lot of people that had associations with the military, associations with the police department, were kind of block captains and things like that. Community activists have worked to join these councils. And let's just talk about the history of the councils. And Rowan wants to come in here to talk about some changes that were that have been discussed about independence of certain councils and problems that we're having with a hierarchy of the councils. So welcome to the program, Rowan. You've been council chair of the Valley Community Policing Council for how long?
I don't know. I don't know. I came in and I was a chair.
2 years, 3 years?
No, I'd say more like 4, heading maybe for 5.
Really? So you've been around for a while.
I am working towards obsolescence all the time.
And you know, like when I was vice chair of Southeast Area, that there's all these different meetings and stuff that you need to go to, summits that have to do with the U.S. Attorney, with part of members from the Independent Monitor, Dr. James Ginger's team, a lot of police oversight. A lot of these meetings have been crime reports and lectures and guests from district judges and DAs and even people from the state legislature, all with all their own different plans on how to do actual community policing and how to better the community. Dick, how long have you been with the Valley CPC?
I would say about 3 months, but I didn't come into the chair. I was lucky.
Okay, and what are your impressions so far?
Well, it seems to me it is an excellent opportunity to talk to police officers. For one thing, they have to listen to you at the meeting, but they generally, it seems to me, at least the fellows who have been in our meetings, have a real desire to have a dialogue, and they're pretty open to criticism and talking. Now, whether that gets us very far is another question, and that, I think, is what you're asking me.
Right, I've seen really good communications with police officers, but everybody keeps talking about community policing, and they set up like 3 different programs in the city, and at one point there were 4 different people on one floor all working on community policing, and they had like 36 officers committed to community policing, but we never really saw any real community policing in the communities. You know, when the university gets in and kids start going back to school, you'll see cops on horseback and segways and bikes and stuff like that, and then they seem to disappear. And one of my problems with the CPCs, and one of the reasons I got off it was I kept suggesting that our CPC had formed subcommittees to directly work with community groups and community businesses, and they kept saying, okay, we'll set that up, but it never did. And I was listening to Tom Hartman the other day on the radio, and he sort of summed up community policing in a couple of sentences. He goes, get out of your car, walk the beat, be part of your neighborhood for a number of years, 3 years, if not more. And when I first went to Community Policing Academy, because you have to, well, most of us had to go to Community Policing Academy in order to be eligible to be on these councils. My instructor used to be the lieutenant in charge of the Valley Command under the Martin Chavez mayoral administration. And Martin Chavez said, Lieutenant Larry, because crime was rising in the valley at that point, and can you get your officers to get out of your car and walk the beat? And crime dropped dramatically. Andres, you've been with Southeast area for at least 2 or almost 3 years, and you just had to get off it recently because you're running for public office. But what are your impressions, especially as an activist being on that council?
Well, I'm going to start by saying first, that's one of the reasons why I'm running for city council. There just needs to be a whole lot of police reform from top to bottom, and the CPCs are no exception. So the CPCs, when I got there, the setting, if you may, was basically meetings with reports from police officers, from police departments. And the reports seemed to just be that, reports with no follow-up, or there was no like tying up, well, which are we do, or like what's our purpose. Almost, it almost seemed as though the CPCs were losing their purpose, which is, and basically was, and I brought a copy of the ordinance establishing the community policing councils by the city, and if you'd like, I can read just a portion where it talks about its purpose, which
very
is really,
briefly, please.
It's very short. It's like one paragraph, and so it says. Its purpose is to facilitate regular communication, collaboration, consensus building, and cooperation between the Albuquerque Police Department and the community. All community members are encouraged to attend Community Policing Council meetings to provide comments and are welcome to participate on Community Policing Council committees. In addition to that, in the CASA agreement, it really points out and makes a point that that the purpose also is to include compliance of the police department with the CASA agreement, which is its purpose that really kind of ties it in and gives it real purpose. And so there's been some problems. I mean, basically that's what I experienced when I got there, and it followed through. And there was like points where the district attorney was brought in to speak, and he was basically supporting secret grand jury proceedings as opposed to open public preliminary hearings, which I was very concerned about. But there didn't seem to be too much concern about that. There seems to be some apathy or complacency, if you may. But at the end, things got kind of a little heated because there was this one situation where a gentleman applied to become a member who had a Facebook page that seemed to be like malicious style, Facebook style. So it sort of set the other CPC members on, people became concerned and brought up the issues. One of the members, the applicant ended up being the boyfriend of one of the already members of the CPC.
Right, and he sort of had ties to white supremacy groups and stuff like that, and there were other issues involved.
Well, it very much appears that way, and so we were not comfortable with having him sit in the CPC, being its purpose is really to see if we're complying with human and civil rights.
And that leads up to a subject that I wanted to discuss later. In the past 2 or 3 years, there's been a formation of the thing with the chairs of the 6 CPCs called the Council of Chairs, where they've set kind of agendas and when to be at the summit and different videos and relationships with the cops on their own, but they took it upon themselves to overrule the Southeast Area Command's ruling on one individual that was mixed up with that.
That's exactly one of the concerns and developments over the CPCs, this Council of Chairs, and basically their authority. And it appears that in the first place, the Council of Chairs is not a creation of the city council rules or regulations or a creation of CASA. It almost seems to be a creation of its own. And the problem that occurred is they basically usurped the authority of the Southeast Area Command by overriding the fact this Michael Kreyole basically. Well,
that's okay. We don't need to name names.
No names. But there was real serious ethical violations. That were not correct, and there was an appeal, and it was overridden, and so that's where we're concerned that CPCs, if they're even should be allowed to exist at all, they shouldn't be usurping the authority of the CPCs, the local CPCs.
Well, some people think they should be autonomous to their own commands and serving their own community.
Exactly.
Let's get an opinion on that from the inside from Rowan.
Okay, yes.
I've been with at least 4 or 5 different organizations, and for 3 of them I served on the Executive Council, which is a recognized part of, say, I was with a union, I was with the they're not the CPC, but there's something like that, I forget, it was so long ago, but I was on the Executive Council of the Union Coalition for the Middle New Mexico County. I was on the Executive Council for my teachers' union. I was on the Executive Council for my school, the school that I taught at. And yes, we did make decisions independent of the body, but we brought them before the body. And I think mistakes have been made. I will agree, mistakes have been made. Mistakes have been made on both sides. And I think this has been a learning experience that is going to change, considerably alter the landscape. But I see the Council of Chairs as an executive committee, which is a recognized, I'm looking at you, Dick, because I'm sure you know the formation, like Robert's Rules, stuff like that. There are executive committees.
Well, frankly, all right, I can accept bureaucratic squabbles.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not worth, in my mind, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And it seems like the bathwater is swirling, roiling, I might say. You got citizens who come together on a monthly basis with the cops to talk. And then the federal judge allows you into court and speak to him and voice the community, hopefully the community's sentiment about a major issue in the city. Now, that structure, that purpose seems good to me. And I would love to have you back and all of your friends and colleagues to meetings. Now, I attended a couple of meetings of the Southeast CPC, and it was vibrant. The chair, I guess, invited a lawyer from back east who had done civil rights suits and police brutality suits, and he was great. And they had several other people from the department, and Medina, Chief Medina was there as well. And it was vibrant, and the community, I thought, it was on Zoom, I couldn't tell for sure, but it was involved.
Yeah, with COVID, and you know, that's part of the positive aspects of the whole thing. I mean, we've discussed initiatives, police reform initiatives in other cities, Seattle, Pittsburgh, where the Independent Monitor came from originally, and Baltimore, Camden, Philadelphia, models like that. The DA and the USDA brought in the LEAD program, and we got all sorts of people from the community involved, and then we had meeting places offsite, and they were promised millions of dollars in grants and stuff like that, and all of a sudden that fizzled out, unfortunately. And some of the good things is, you know, they do bring in some members of the community. Usually ends up being a concerned neighborhood association. They're only given 2 minutes, like city council, and we've also had problems with resolutions. Like the person that you vaguely heard reference actually wrote 2 really good technical recommendations for the police department themselves that were entertained and approved by the chief's office. And anybody on the councils or submitting to the councils can submit recommendations that go to the chief's office. One of the criticisms is that some of these, or most of these in the past, used to be ignored by the Berry administration, and it doesn't necessarily go directly to the chief. It goes to a team of lieutenants and it may or may not get to the chief. So there are very positive aspects of these community policing councils. When I resigned and talked to all the people at the initial George Floyd vigil at the Peace Center, I was singing the praises of the CPCs and trying to get people to join, but at the same time, I was criticizing them for certain reasons. Like, things have been changed, and the CPOA and Chief Medina are working with things to make the training and the Citizen Police Academy very abbreviated in order to serve. But when I was on there, you had to go to the Civilian Police Academy for 12 weeks, go to 4-hour classes twice a week, and go on field trips. And the CASA says that the council should be represented by every strata of the community. And people couldn't afford to the daycare, the gas, the time after work to go to all these classes. But things are changing, and
I could agree with you more,
Right.
Mr. Dan. I mean, it's not representative of the community, and that's a problem that the police councils have to attract people from the community.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, Rowan and I, white old fogies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's who's on our council.
Well,
I mean, I won't speak for all of
things
them, but
things can change. One Democrat, oops, I shouldn't say that. One political party in the state was viewed the same way. The Pew Center used to be viewed that way at one point too. It's like, oh, it's just a bunch of old white people, but things are drastically changing in the Peace Center. Things are starting to change in the Democratic Party, and we've seen activists and persons of color and from different communities starting to get into the Community Police Council. I'll let you talk in just a second. The last point I wanted to make was, as the CASA is like winding down, and certain people like Sean Willoughby and the police union want the consent decree and the feds out of town, the CPCs want to be more vibrant, they want to be more active, they want more people in the community to know about them, and Rowan even has talked to people about ideas for the CPCs to be a little bit more independent and autonomous.
Well, actually, I brought it up to all the chairs, and so the chairs are all. I just want to make one point. The CPA is gone. We don't have to do it. I mean, Dick can do it if he wants to.
You don't even have to do
He doesn't have to
the
do
weekends with the video seminars and things like that?
No.
Oh, very
I
good,
don't
very
think
good.
so. I think Elizabeth Martinez, the DOJ person, was always vehemently against it, and it has been removed. It might still be in the ordinance. It shouldn't be. And that should be discussed. I don't know if it's there or not, but it shouldn't be. It is gone. It is no longer a requirement.
And that caused a lot of growing pains at the time when they were trying to shrink it down. It actually got Andreas and another member of the Southeast Area Community Policing Councils temporarily kicked off the boards.
And also, if you have a felony record, not a serious. If you have a serious one, no, you can't. But if it's a minor offence, it's gone.
Absolved and time served, you can be on the councils now?
Yeah.
That is great.
I want to say something here.
I'm sorry, Andres.
No, that's fine. But basically, the CPCs belong to the community.
Oh, yeah.
The community needs to take ownership of those CPCs. The community has not taken ownership. There's something, it almost seems as though there was like an intentional, like, kind of complacency
Omission.
in that became the CPCs with the support of the police department. So I guess I wonder if that's so they wouldn't have to comply, so they wouldn't have to have the community as a watchdog. So here's the thing, that there needs to be a move. There needs to be a strategy to get out there and have the community take ownership of those CPCs. Just wanted to say that.
I just want to say that this is the whole reason I'm here, is that, and this is the reason I met with Jim, because we need, one of our problems is we're so associated with the police. The assumption is that we work under them, that we're just a branch of the police. I hear that a lot.
Right.
And we're an individual, independent entity. And I love what you say, Andres, about getting the community involved, but
It's
in all
theirs.
fairness, white and old as we are, we're still the community.
Oh, most definitely. This has nothing to do with race, but
Yeah.
it has to do with people
Yeah.
that are facing the issues out there to be able to come to the
course.
CPC and say, this is what happened, what can be done about
Right,
it.
right.
And so basically that.
Yeah, it's like people in communities and international districts that do cop watch and other things like that. They should be working in accordance with the CPCs instead of being out on their own.
Yeah.
And I suggested things like that. There seemed to be an immediate blackout, and if not under the Berry administration. And now, it's like when I was addressing this huge crowd 2 years ago, I asked, raise your hand if you've heard of CPCs. Six people out of about 2,000 raised their hand. I suggested it should be on people's water bills. It should be a media campaign, but it never was. But here's a media campaign right now, and maybe we can revive these CPCs and take ownership, like the new ambassador program. They're trying to bridge the gap between the community and the police, and they're being labeled by different activist groups as police suck-ups, but they're trying to help. And there's other models in other cities, like the Cure Violence campaign, which has people like navigators and ambassadors to go out in the community, organize their communities, find out their problems, and bring them to community entities like CPCs. They could be very valuable. They could be a great community policing and community reform tool. And at this point, let's get more people involved, build them up, and make them what they need to be to serve us, the community. And we're about to wrap up. Does anybody have one last thing they want to add?
Yes, I do.
Very, very briefly.
Yes,
You've got about 30 seconds.
Basically about CPCs being suck-ups to the police, that can easily happen. And I think in many cases that does happen. But it's up to the community, have the political will to be make sure that police are complying with the CASA agreement. I think that's the biggest purpose of the CPCs.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. Yes, I do too.
And they're terribly interesting, and the community should participate. If you don't want to be on a council, go to the meetings. There could be fireworks.
And actually, where you can find the CPCs, like they were mentioning before, they do meet once a month at your local community centers. Look them up. You can go to the city's website. Unfortunately, they're kind of at the bottom under police, but you can see the different area commands and all that. I do want to thank our panel. Andreas, Dick, Rowan, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Tom, for having us.
We're about to go to our second part of perspectives, which is Eddie Paulsgrove talking about illegal dumping in Rio Rancho landfills and sewage treatment plants, followed by great music by Racine Kreyole.
Radioactive waste and landfill issues. Tons and tons of radioactive waste. Wastewater, drinking water, soil water, growing water, all those things that affect our lives. And it's happening right here in our community, right up the road in Rio Rancho. Other places around the state as well, but today we're going to be talking about what's happening right at our doorstep. Our guest is Eddie Paulsgrove, geologist, retired Corps of Engineers regulator, environmentalist with interest in regulatory issues. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And this is one of those alarming topics, but the people need to know what's happening in our neighborhood. So thank you for coming on That Saturday Show. And I just want to hand this off to you and just tell us what's happening, Eddie.
Well, thank you, Jim, and I appreciate the opportunity to give out some data and some information that folks may not know. I'm going to preface everything by saying, that my main concern is how we can have NMED work with us to address these issues. I've got two big issues here, primarily. But as you alluded to, Jim, hundreds of tons of radioactive waste in March of 2018 was transported into Rio Rancho and disposed of in the Rio Rancho waste management landfill. Material was dumped in the landfill that has 4 schools, an assisted living facility, homes and businesses within just 1 mile radius. So that's really a big concern of me. I have a second concern also, is that a year and a half later, in August of 2019, we had 5,000 gallons of radioactive wastewater that was transported again into Rio Rancho and disposed in the Rio Rancho wastewater treatment infrastructure. So those two issues are very concerning to me. And that's really what I wanted to talk about. But I know that a lot of folks are going to be thinking, how could there be radioactive waste just outside of Rio Rancho brought into town? And let me say, these aren't nuclear fuel cell spent cells or anything like that. What this is a naturally occurring radioactive material, a norm that's found in briny wells west of Rio Rancho. The radioactive material concentration is actually a total radium concentration, which Some folks may remember the radium girls back in the teens and 20s. It is a real thing. It's a very dangerous thing. These concentrations were such that were stated, and the data that was used, 17 times the permissible maximum contaminant levels, both state and federal, for drinking water and disposal. When they turn that in.
So Eddie, share a little bit before you go on. Let's talk about these briny wells, because I think that that's significant in terms of, you know, how things are being transmitted.
Okay, well, these briny wells were, they were advanced. The idea was advanced and pursued by Sandoval County back in 2007. 2 wells were developed about 10 to 15 miles west of Rio Rancho, adjacent to the Laguna Puebla. That the idea was to explore deep, briny water to see if treatment would be available that would be able to convert this briny water into potable water. So that was the idea, and they actually did studies. They did a desalinization project out there on that site, and all of this material ultimately was collected in great big impoundment, which is where all of the landfill material, the radioactive waste, came from.
So it's taking the salt out of the water. Was there, well, desalinization, right? Right.
And what they did is they took the salt out, and they also used different processes, reverse osmosis, different kinds of treatments to remove the contaminant waste streams as well. So they were successful in removing the arsenic and radium and other radionuclides out of the briny water and creating a concentrated waste stream of just those concentrations.
So what happened next? What happened with the briny wells after that?
Well, the briny wells are still out there. They've leaked a number of times, causing issues on their own, but they never really became an issue for Rio Rancho until, like I say, March of 2018, when apparently New Mexico Environment Department ordered the people and responsible, the managers of these briny wells, to fix the ponds that they had out there, the impoundments that were storing all this salt. March of 2018, 48 truckloads, 288 tons of this salt was transported from remote location along Northern Boulevard and taken to the waste management landfill and dumped on the ground. Dumping it on the ground was probably during the windy season, was probably the very, very worst thing that could happen.
Seeps into the soil.
Worse, it became part of the wind vector dispersal.
Ouch.
Yes. If we have these concentrated radium wastes sitting on the ground surface, we have high winds like we do in March, April, May.
You can inhale it.
The vector, the mobility created by the wind vector could have taken quite a bit of this carcinogen radium to schools and homes and businesses within, like I say, within a single 1 mile radius. Now, why did it sit on the ground, though? The reason it sat on the ground, according to Waste Management, is because, hey, we were told it was just clean fill. We were going to use it for ground cover, to cover up real waste that comes into the landfill. Now, they're always looking for clean fills. Well, they stated that's what they were told, is that all of these 288 tons of material was clean fill. Now, I believe subsequent to that statement they made, they came back later and said, well, you know what? No, we didn't leave it on. We buried it as soon as we could. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to say anything. I don't know. But we do know their first statement was that it was left on the ground, subject to
That's pretty frightening, though. Just the idea of radium being airborne and into a community, particularly during the high wind seasons, that in and of itself could do a lot of damage to people.
Well, Jim, the point of the matter is that radium inhaled is worse than drinking it, eating it, anything. You inhale it, your body just keeps it. and it will quickly travel to your bones. Bone cancer is a not uncommon result of chronic radium inhalation.
Sure, sure. It would be worth looking into incidences of lung cancer since this happened, particularly in the Rio Rancho area, but even further, even into parts of Albuquerque, to just see if there's been a spike since this happened. That's something that I think we're going to dig into, for a future discussion as well. And so it's also an issue around arsenic.
Well, arsenic, high concentrations, actually about 64 times the maximum contaminant level for arsenic. Now, most people in Rio Rancho and Albuquerque, we've got kind of accustomed to hearing about arsenic. Not in these levels. Not in these levels. The level, we're used to maybe 5 times to 64 times the level was mixed in with this same waste material, this same salt, and subject to dispersal like the radium. I'm not an oncologist. I really can't tell you, I can't get into the medical issues necessarily, and I can't really tell you right now today how scared people ought to be. I can't, it's just out of my wheelhouse. But I can tell you in March of 2018, and that material was dumped on the ground, I would not have wanted to have been in the space of wind driving that material. I can say that. I feel comfortable saying that. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not trying to lay blame on anybody, but I would say that was the worst perfect storm situation.
So I know you mentioned earlier schools and assisted living facilities in close proximity to the landfill.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, you've got within a 1 mile radius of the landfill where this material is taken. You've got 2 middle schools. You've got one high school, and you have one. Actually, it's a adolescent, small kid school, nursery school, whatever they call those now.
Elementary schools.
Yeah,
schools.
Yeah, one of those small kid school. So all of those are within a 1 mile radius of this. If it was out there in March of 2018, that's prior to any of the pandemic, so kids out on playgrounds. I mean, I'm just, I'm not trying to be an alarmist here, but I am trying to be realistic. If the material was as concentrated as the data of the time says it was, then the salt itself exceeded federal regulations for soil, along with the liquid contamination. And the main concern even would be that waste stream that was a part of the total salt package that was deposited. There were never any analytical tests done on that salt, or specifically this waste stream material, so we really don't know. I've backtracked and used some math based on the data that we have available at the time, and my numbers come up as being pretty dangerous. Just my numbers. I'd be happy to sit down. I'd be happy to try to convince NMED to use the same numbers that we used at the time. They've decided to backtrack off the same numbers they used and introduce a much lower radium concentration. Still 4.5 times the maximum drinking water level, but less than what it would be for soil contamination.
So was that a number that was made out of whole cloth, or by NMED, or I mean, it sounds pretty intentional and pretty deceiving as far as I can see it.
Well, from 2007 through 2019, everybody, contractors, NMED, everybody used this 85 picocuries per liter, 17 times the maximum contaminant level, and everybody used it until NMED found out about the salt at the landfill, the radioactive evaporator. I think they did use, it's my opinion, they may have used the 85 picocurie number, and came up with the same numbers I did that showed, wow, that evaporate would have exceeded the maximum contaminant level for soils. Total radium contamination of soils within the top 15 centimeters. So what did they do? Well, they said, well, you know what? They told me that they've used 23.5 or so based on data that was available during the pandemic. There was no scientific basis. It was convenient. In my mind, it was arbitrary execution because there is no scientific basis. Now, that number was a data point out of 5, but it was the lowest data point that they could find. 85 is the highest. If we're looking at risk assessments based on fluctuating contaminants, I'm going to be focused on the highest potential risk, not the lowest potential risk to the public. You see, and that's just, we all used, for 12 years, everyone used the 85, the highest. Suddenly, now it's the lowest. And I think they've got some explaining about that other than just their convenience.
I would certainly think so as well. I would. So in the minute or so that we've got left, and this is a discussion I think we're going to have to circle back around and dig a little deeper into, because there's just so many more implications related to this whole topic. And even though you don't mean to sound the alarm, I'm sounding the alarm that, we've got to do something about it. So best recommendations, and just for our viewers' sake too, when we talk about NMED, we're talking about the New Mexico Environmental Department.
Correct.
And they're a culprit in this. That's got to be called on it. And so, what do you think are some of the ways that the community, that everyday citizens can in fact begin to marshal our voices and call them to account for what's happening out there?
Well, we need to contact NMED, I would say, to the extent possible, try to either through a petition of some kind or individual contact with either Secretary Kinney or the Solid Waste Bureau there with the Environment Department. But what we want to try to do is have them discuss this issue with us. Because what I'm saying is based on data I've obtained from the Environment Department through information request forms and so on and so forth, and other reports. This isn't anything that I'm pulling out of the air. This is stuff they've provided to me. Now, I've just compiled it. And like I say, I'm not making any assumptions, but we need them to become a vested partner in this issue and provide a lot more information than what they've done. Right now, all they're doing is saying there's no problem. It's not dangerous. I've got data that says it is. We need to talk about it. My data is from them. So, that's an issue. So that's what I think people need to get together and petition.
That's a huge issue. We're going to keep this discussion going. But for now, Eddie, thank you so much for coming on That Saturday Show. And we're going to invite you back because, like I said, we've got a lot more to cover here. In the meantime, if anybody has any additional questions, contact us here at That Saturday Show. We'll link you to Eddie and we'll link you to other authorities. And, let's get rolling on this. Our lives depend on it. Thanks so much, Eddie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jim.
big woman.